Hey guys, today we will begin section 5.4, which is the sum and difference formulas on page 398. The first thing, like it says here, you need to do are copy those formulas. These are your sum and difference formulas, and in total there are 6. 2 for sine, 2 for cosine, and 2 for tan. Okay, so I'm basically going to just be doing one example for this video to introduce the lesson. So in this lesson, they're going to be asking you for values of angles that are not on the unit circle. So for example, let's say you were given the angle 11 pi over 12. And you were asked find sine, cosine, and tangent without a calculator, let's say. Now, obviously, if you have a calculator, you could just punch that in, which I actually need you to do, and you should do, is go ahead and punch in your calculator sine of 11 pi over 12, cosine of 11 pi over 12, and tangent over 11 pi over 12. And calculate that and have those values in front of you. So pause the video and do that. I would do that for you, but I don't have a calculator. My calculator actually broke. So I'm going to be showing you how to do this without one. So the first thing I need to do is I need to figure out two angles that are on my unit circle that either add or subtract to be 11 pi over 12. So I know that 3 pi over 4 added to pi over 6 would add to 11 pi over 12. So if you find the common denominator, reduce, and do all that, 3 pi over 4 plus pi over 6 is 11 pi over 12. And again, pause the video and just verify that. Okay, but I did this problem ahead of time, so I know that this does, in fact, equal 11 pi over 12. Now, these two angles are being added. Okay, so that means I'm going to be using my sum formulas, not the difference, since nothing is being subtracted here, so my sum formulas. And this angle I'm going to call U, and this angle will be called V, just like in the formulas you see right there in front of you. Okay, so let's first find sine. So in order to find sine, we're going to write it as it is in the formula. So sine of 3 pi over 4 plus pi over 6. And now just go ahead and plug in these values in your formula. So the formula says sine U, so sine of 3 pi over 4, times cosine V, pi over 6, plus cosine U. And you guys, by the way, are very lucky, sine V, that you're home, because in school, whenever I do this lesson, oftentimes these formulas get confused because they're very similar. So now let's evaluate that again without a calculator. You should know what sine of 3 pi over 4 is. That would be square root of 2 over 2. Cosine of pi over 6 is square root of 3 over 2. Plus cosine 3 pi over 4 is negative square root of 2 over 2 times sine of pi over 6 is 1/2. And I multiply these and multiply these. So now that would be square root of 6 over 4 minus square root of 2 over 4. And now we got to simplify this. So since they have the same denominator, we can go ahead and combine those numerators. Now you have an option. You can leave your answer like this, but when I give you problems to do in the book, you're going to see that they're going to further simplify this. So how do I further simplify? I can factor out a square root of 2 over 4. And that would be, if I factor that out, what would be left would be a square root of 3 minus 1. So this is how you're going to see the book writes it in factored form. Okay, but if you left your answer like this, you would be fine. Now again, how do I verify that I did this right? You would type this into a calculator and see what that equals, and it should match the answer I told you to find in the beginning, which was the sine of 11 pi over 12. Okay, they should match. Maybe off by some decimals, but in general they should match. Okay, now I'm thinking you get the picture here. What we're doing is we're just applying formulas. Now cosine is very similar. If you want to forward through this, you find that this is easy, go ahead, but I would not forward through tangent because tangent is very tricky. Okay, so again, this is u and this is v. So all we're doing is we're going to apply the formula, the sum formula for cosine. So cosine u, you know what, I'm actually going to skip this step because I think you should be following. I'm going to go ahead and just evaluate it. Okay, so cosine u is negative square root of 2 over 2 times cosine v, which is square root of 3 over 2, minus sine of u, so square root of 2 over 2, times sine of v, which is 1/2, right? So now again, combine these two and combine these two. And that would give you negative square root of 6 over 4 minus square root of 2 over 4, right? And combine those numerators and you get negative square root of 6 minus square root of 2 over 4. Now again, factoring out, which is not too hard, right? We would factor out a negative square root of 2 over 4, and inside would be left square root of 3 plus 1. And that's your final answer. And again, I would definitely verify that, put it in a calculator, and it should match the answer that you found in the beginning. Okay, now we will tackle tangent. Tangent is definitely a little bit more complicated. So tangent of u plus v, again, tangent of 3 pi over 4 plus pi over 6. This is equal to tangent of 3 pi over 4 plus, and I'm just following the formula, right, for the sum of tan, plus tan of v, so tangent of pi over 6, over 1 minus tangent of u, so tangent of 3 pi over 4, times tangent of v, tan of pi over 6. Okay, so now let's do the numerator. The numerator, what's tan of 3 pi over 4? That would be negative 1, plus tangent of pi over 6, and remember that's y divided by x, so that would be square root of 3 over 3. I'm doing this in my head, so I'm hoping I'm right here. Now 1 minus, it's again tangent of 3 pi over 4 is negative 1. So I'm going to put that in parentheses since there's a double negative there. Okay, times tangent of pi over 6, which again we said is square root of 3 over 3. Okay, now order of operations, I should actually, you know what, I'm going to do the numerator. So basically what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to simplify a lot here, okay? So in the numerator, just pay attention to the numerator. Notice there's a negative 1. So I'm going to turn that into negative 3 over 3 because I want to combine it with square root of 3 over 3. So that numerator is going to turn into negative 3 plus square root of 3 all over 3. Got that? So that's just the numerator. Now the denominator. That denominator is going to turn into 1 plus, right, because of that double negative there, square root of 3 over 3. And doing the same thing, right, turning that 1 into 3 over 3 and combining it, you end up with 3 plus square root of 3 over 3. Okay, so now this is what my fraction looks like. Negative 3 plus square root of 3 over 3 over 3 plus square root of 3 over 3. Now, algebraically, what I have to do there is I have to turn this into one fraction, right? I can't have a fraction over a fraction like that. So how do you divide? You multiply by the reciprocal. So that would be negative 3 plus square root of 3 over 3 times the reciprocal of that denominator is 3 over 3 plus square root of 3. This is hopefully you're following along, but again, you guys have the capability of pausing and rewinding. So please do that if you are confused with the messy math here. Now I can cross these out. So now what am I left with? Negative 3 plus square root of 3 over 3 plus square root of 3. That's still not simplified because you know you can't have a radical in the denominator. So now the thing that's tricky here, and please don't do this, this is a very silly mistake, but it happens, is that you might think that, oh, these guys cross out, right? Because they're the same, so the answer is -1. No, you can't do that because of the plus signs. So what I'm going to do is something, an old concept, which we haven't done in a while, which is I'm going to multiply by the conjugate of the denominator because that's how I rationalize. So that would be 3 minus square root of 3. 3 minus square root of 3. Okay? Now, when I do that, let's do the denominator first. When you multiply an irrational number by its conjugate, it's basically just multiplying these guys together. That would be 9 minus, and then multiplying these guys together, that would be 3. So the denominator is beautiful. It just turns into 6. Okay, but the numerator is not going to work that way because those aren't conjugates. Okay, so you have to distribute and do all that. So right here, I'm gonna write it on the side here, and I'm gonna use a different color just to differentiate. I'll use red. Okay, so -3 plus square root of 3 multiplied by 3 minus square root of 3. So distribute that. That would be -9 plus square root of 3. Oops. Nope, I'm wrong. Okay, so -3 times square root of 3 would be positive 3 square root of 3, okay? And then right here, plus 3 square root of 3, and then minus 3. Combine these like terms, that would be -9 plus 6 square root of 3 minus 3. And then I have more like terms, so in the end, that would turn into -12 plus 6 square root of 3. Okay? -12 plus 6 square root of 3. Now, in order to reduce this fraction, I would separate that. So that'd be -12 over 6 plus 6 square root of 3 over 6. And that would be -2 plus square root of 3. I can't factor anything out to simplify that, so that is my final answer. Okay? And again, put that in the calculator and see if that answer matches the answer I told you to find in the beginning, right here, the tan of 11 pi over 12. It should match because that's what these formulas help us to do. It's basically helping us to solve this without a calculator, but use a calculator to check, obviously. Okay? That's about it, guys. There is more to this lesson, but for now, this is the bulk of it. Okay? Have a good one.